Pretty much all of us now shop online, and with this rise in mobile and online payments has come an equally big increase in fraud. Fraud costs online retailers around 8% of their revenue, a significant but avoidable amount, according to my guest today. Most merchants aren't fraud experts, though. So what should they do? Well, let's meet Brad Wiskirschen, Chief Executive of Kount, a technology company offering fraud detection services. I'm Sarah Lockett. Welcome to the Business Debate. Brad, thanks for joining us on the Business Debate.
Thanks for having me.
So to set the scene, are all companies that offer online payments being hit by fraud? How big is the problem?
Remarkably, yes. It hits for-profit companies, non-profit companies, charities, anyone who's engaged in e-commerce. One industry study recently showed that many merchants use up to 7.5% of their revenue to combat fraud, so it's an enormous problem.
And it's not just the cost of the items that aren't paid for, is it? What are some of the other costs involved in fraud?
There's actually quite a few costs involved in fraud. So there's the cost of the items, there's the cost of any chargebacks that the merchant may have to deal with.
And what is a chargeback? That's
a good question. A chargeback is actually where a consumer gets their credit card statement, says, I don't recognize that item, and then calls their bank and says, this must be fraud. The merchant ends up paying for that. And then there's also on top of that any fees or fines which the card brands may impose because there are excessive chargebacks. And then the merchant actually has to pay for people in order to do manual reviews of the transactions to ensure it's a real consumer, and any services they use in order to combat fraud. So it's quite expensive.
And many companies have got piecemeal bits of technology that track different bits of fraud. And what are the disadvantages of that?
Well, the disadvantages are really that those individual tools, we call them point solutions, weren't made in order to work with each other. And so you're only going to provide a response to the consumer as fast as your slowest third-party solution. So you can actually end up causing concern amongst the consumers saying, oh, why is it taking so long for this transaction to take place? And then they actually abandon the transaction and you lose revenue.
And some companies are worried that when they buy into a solution like yours, that they won't get the cover that they need. So what would you say to that? And also you say yours can be implemented in minutes. Are you exaggerating a bit there?
No, there's no hyperbole there whatsoever. Actually, depending on how you implement Kount, you can be up and running in 15 to 17 minutes. So that's compared to a lot of other service providers who can take 3 to 6 months in order to implement their solution. What I'd say to those people who are concerned that we don't have enough or that nobody has enough, we actually have a comprehensive solution. We've been in the business for 10 years. Our roots are in artificial intelligence and machine learning, but we have dozens of other fraud technologies that were purpose-built to work seamlessly together so that we can provide responses as fast as 250 milliseconds. So it doesn't adversely impact a transaction. But we also, in addition to that artificial intelligence, have human intelligence. We have subject matter experts who help our merchants in order to set up an appropriate fraud strategy for their business. I would say that artificial intelligence plus human intelligence actually equates to real intelligence, and you need real intelligence in order to combat fraud.
And if companies don't tackle fraud, then customers can actually stay away. Their reputation becomes so bad. Have you actually seen that happen?
Oh, yes. If a customer, particularly online for some reason, has a bad experience, just one bad experience, they often won't go back to that retailer. We see it very regularly. I've had direct interactions with consumers who've had one bad experience and have been lifelong clients of a particular merchant and stopped using their e-commerce site. And
you mentioned this a little bit, but sometimes merchants go too far the other way and they block whole countries or whole regions.
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
Again, like I said earlier, you're converting what would be a fraud problem into a revenue problem. So you're arbitrarily cutting out entire geographies, you're stopping selling some of your most lucrative products, or you're stopping leveraging some of your more effective marketing campaigns like affiliate marketing. And so what you end up doing is cutting back your revenues. So if you implement an appropriate fraud strategy, sometimes you can see revenue lifts in the 10, 20, 30% range.
Well, Brad, on that note, thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me.
And join us next time when we'll be discussing the latest innovations in global food security and human capital. Bye-bye for now.